We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's special edition, we will be talking real ID. Is there method to the madness? And also we'll be discussing the case of Abrego Garcia and why Democrats have wedded themselves to this particular cause. It's going to be quite the show. Remember, Liberty Nation Radio, sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. And you're on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we are very fortunate to have with us today Liberty Nation's executive editor, Leesa K. Leesa, thanks ever so much for coming in.
Good to be here, Mark. How are you?
I'm not bad. I'm not bad at all. And I'm actually quite...
caffeinated?
I'm always quite
caffeinated.
With youngsters in the house, there's no better cure for focus, energy, and attention.
Amen to that.
Indeed. So I'm actually quite excited about the week's stories because we have something that I find is actually it's a very contentious one, but for different reasons. So it's contentious on both the left and the right of the political spectrum, and that's the real ID. Now, you've written a fantastic piece on this that, by the way, if anybody's having difficulty figuring out what they need to do, go check out LibertyNation.com. Find Lisa's article on the real ID, because it's chock full of information that's been dragged in from everywhere. So very handy. But the reason it's contentious on both sides is, one, the left doesn't want it implemented because it, well, let's be very clear. It ensures that it's going to ensure that elections IDs must be apparent. So it's really going to hit hard on the illegal immigrant community. But from the right, it's also quite contentious because, who likes ID? Federally mandated identification.
Yeah, it kind of takes you back to papers, please.
Yeah, very much. I mean, that's exactly. There's been a push in the United Kingdom. There's been a push for and they call it the digital ID, because it's going to help you do this. It's going to help you do that. And when, as Ronald Reagan wisely pointed out, the scariest words in the English language are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
Yeah.
And so they've got this idea. Well, in the UK, there's been this push for digital ID for more than a decade. And each time it's been met with enough challenges that it's being pushed down the road. The can's being kicked. But what's your take on the real ID?
Well, let me just say a couple of things. Number one, if you're a procrastinator, you box yourself into a corner. But let me preface the whole discussion with, if you have a passport, you're going to be okay. A passport and a driver's license, you're okay. But ultimately, you do want to get the real ID, because it's just going to streamline things, speed things up. And, people who are moaning and groaning that this is a Trump thing, this is a holdover from the George W. Bush era.
Sure.
And every president has been kicking the can down the road. And now it's time where the rubber meets the road and you got to sign up. So just so you know, I made an appointment for my family about 6 months ago, and we made an appointment at the DMV, which was very convenient to make an appointment instead of waiting in line. Right?
Yeah, I personally haven't seen the movie Zootopia, but
oh my gosh.
I believe you referenced it in your article, and you made an allusion to the
Sloth.
DMV. Yes, sloths are the ones that run the DMV, and I mean it's spread beyond America's borders, and everybody knows the DMV all over the world. Everybody knows the DMV, and they know that it's not a place where normalcy takes, normalcy happens.
Long and complicated. So, you have to bring every state has different rules. So in the state that we live in, you had to bring 2 forms of proof of residency, like a piece of mail that has your name on it. But it better have your correct name on it. Yeah. Like my one son is a 3rd.
Right.
And one piece of mail didn't have the 3rd on it. So luckily my husband brought a stack of mail and we started going through it at the DMV. But it's tricky, because you have to bring 2 forms of ID. You have to also have originals. You can't just bring a photocopy of your birth certificate or something like that. That's not going to fly. And then ultimately, when you go up there and you fill out the form, they sort of send it over to the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. I shouldn't say sort of. I I think they did.
Sure.
They send your information over to the Department of Homeland Security and they give the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Now, where people are really getting freaked out is if you're a legal alien.
So as you mentioned, this came in under George W. Bush, and then it wasn't gotten rid of. It was just pushed down the line by successive presidents. And I think part of that is because there's only been one president since then who has openly and proudly declared that we're going to do something about illegal immigration by cutting off pathways that make life more difficult for those illegal immigrants living in the United States. And that's really the purpose of it, isn't it? It's to
Yeah.
make life
Well,
difficult in
well,
the hope
also,
that they'll self-deport.
yeah, also it came up after 9/11. So,
Yeah.
people wanted to know who the hell's on the plane,
Mm.
you know? And so that's really important. But now it's taken on a different life with the illegal aliens because we have so many more in our country.
I, I
Uh,
I thought it was still the 11 million number that I heard 25 years ago. No, actually, I'm fairly sure that's about 20 or 30 now, but please carry on.
so here's the situation with the illegal aliens, Mark. Um, it's a gray area as to how the situation is going to shake out for them. First of all, can they get on the flight with a passport from somewhere else? Immigration attorneys say, just as long as they have documentation, they should be able to fly domestically. But then Christy Nome comes out. She's like, no, 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 no. You want to go somewhere you're illegal alien? Make sure it's an international flight. Make sure you're going home.
Right.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a gray area.
Mm.
If I was an illegal alien, I'm not sure I would fly right away.
Well, so I believe they're perfectly allowed to get on a flight to leave the country. I think
Right.
that's
That's what Nome said. Yeah.
yeah. So that's perfectly fine for them to do, but it's really about approaching the illegal immigration problem from a number of angles, and Real ID appears to be one of those, that it's making life more difficult for illegal aliens to function in the United States. And there are many other avenues that the Trump administration's pursuing in this as well. But I want to come back to the what you feel personally, Lisa, about having another ID that needs to be
I
used
know.
because
I know.
it is an imposition. You had to go to
Yeah.
the DMV, even though you booked the appointment, very sensible. But it's another level of imposition on, come on, this is America, right? This is America.
Right.
We should be able to travel on planes with our bazookas. And
Right. So May 7th is the drop dead date. But
sure.
just as an aside, a friend of mine called yesterday and said that he called the DMV or he contacted them online, and the first available appointment he could get was May 20th. So, you know, it's
It's
going to
like the
be
British
hard.
National Health Service. I need to see a doctor immediately. No problem. We'll fit you in 2028.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And you can pay for it if it isn't approved.
Mm, absolutely right.
What happened in the run-up, let me just mention this, is that 19 states, including the District of Columbia, went ahead and decided that illegals can apply for driver's licenses
Yeah,
and get them. And that's kind of a double-edged sword because it's like, wow, should they get, a driver's license? But on the other hand, this encourages them to get insurance and it encourages them to have to pass a test.
sure.
You understand?
Yeah,
So
it's to limit
that's kind of
criminality. So they're
right.
passing new laws to limit criminality, which is possibly the worst reason I can think of for passing new
Yeah.
laws.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I
many
mean,
people are
I'm not
committing
crazy
this
about
crime. Let's
tons of
just make
forms
it
of
legal.
ID, but I think this is
Yeah.
going to help in the long run. Certainly, it's going to help with voting. Um,
Well, that's the key
you
thing,
know,
isn't it? It's Donald Trump says it's for many different reasons. The DHS says it's for many different reasons, but I think ultimately it all comes down to uh, they want to implement when you go to vote, you got to show a real ID because a real ID has been verified as you're a citizen, you're legally allowed to vote in this
yeah,
election.
boy, it has. It's jumped through hoop top.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which it's I get the there's the argument here, isn't it, that we should make it as easy as possible to vote. Well, you should make it as easy as possible to vote for people who are legally permitted
Eligible to vote.
right?
Right.
But it seems that, for example, there was the motor voter under Bill Clinton, where people were just getting signed up to vote when they go for the driving licenses. Coincidentally, that came in at the same time as illegal aliens can have driving licenses. Surely just a coincidence. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, a problem was created because of this initiative, and now this looks like the solution, or a potential solution, to putting an end to that problem. Now, we're going to continue our conversation with Leesa K, executive editor of LibertyNation.com. After this short break, don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.